Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the show. So excited to have you and to introduce to you our guest today, David C.M. Carter. He's a chairman and founder and a serial entrepreneur just like you listening, otherwise known as the world's leading CEO mentor. Yeah, and he's here with me and with Matt. With 40 plus years track record in creating innovative businesses and mentoring leaders and influencers around the globe, Entelechy Academy is the Entelechy of David's career and his legacy project, where he gathered brilliant minds in education, coaching professional organizations to support millions in becoming the best versions of themselves. And we get to have a little bit of that today, and we're so excited. Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you. Serial entrepreneurs. David, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Welcome, David. Welcome.
Hey, just a reminder, our show is brought to you by SmartCookie Media, where we believe data tells a story, and not just any story, your business story. As a subscriber to the show or as a client, you'll get insights on profitable, data-driven marketing strategies that work for you and your business, your industry. Not some cookie cutter trends, no. Ideas that are led by your customer data so you know they'll work for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to learn more. Everything's in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. Let's start the show the way we do with everybody. How would you finish this sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
You know you're an entrepreneur when you realize you're completely unemployable by anybody other than yourself.
That sounds like a story. Tell me about that. When did you know?
My entrepreneurial career started when I was probably about 11 or 12. I heard you could earn good money as a caddy at the local golf club, but there was kind of a waiting list and a pecking order. And so I wandered around the golf course loads of times to get familiar with the golf course and watch some of the players. And on the second time I went, I took a rucksack and filled it up with all of the balls that people had misfired off into the long grass or the woods or whatever. I got back to the car park and some of the players had seen me doing this. I said, "Oh, did you find my Wilson ball or my Titleist ball or whatever?" And I said, "Oh, I've got loads in here." But this was such a long time ago, but I think a golf ball might have cost $1.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, well, help yourself. They're 50 cents each." Anyway, after a few weeks, the caddy master in the professional shop got wind of this. And of course, I was taking money away from them selling balls in the shop. So he said, "I think we better get you out caddying on the golf course."
Gosh.
My second entrepreneurial business was probably when I was about 15, and I started babysitting for my mother's friends. I'd already learned to cook quite well, so I used to say to the mum, "Well, why don't you go and take your time to get ready to go out, and I'll cook the kids' supper, and I'd wash up and tidy up afterwards." So, of course, I became the number one go-to babysitter in my village. After a while, I couldn't do all of the gigs that I was offered, and so I started hiring a few people. And then a few years later, I left home and I sold my first business to one of the girls who worked with me, and on a handshake. And the deal was, if I remember, I got 20% of the takings for the first 12 months.
My gosh, what a great story. On a handshake, Matt. I just want to point out on a handshake.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I will say though, I think your first merger acquisition or role in it, at least, I think it was the caddy shop. I mean, they bought you out. They're like, we can't afford, like, this guy's killing the bottom line. We need to just acquire him, do something, like just put him on the golf course, hire him right now. So I will give credit where credit's due. Your first one really was a lot younger. I love that story.
So good. Also, we're hiring. The Schmied household is hiring for a babysitter. So if you have any tips, now I'm going to have to start asking, do you cook? Oh, incredible. When did you know, though, that you didn't want to work for someone else? Because I feel like that's part of your answer, that you're just not employable by someone else.
I left school and left home when I was 18. I didn't go to university. And it's a long story, but I thought I was going to go into a special unit in the army and become a James Bond. But I had to have a major hip operation, which then meant I couldn't go to university, be sponsored by the army and join this particular division. I'd worked so hard. I was a top athlete and rugby player, and I was going to play rugby for the army. And so I literally woke up the day after this operation, thought I never thought of a plan B. And I got married very young, so I had to go out and earn some money. Even though my dad had been in banking for 20, 30, 40 years, I'd always said I'd never do that. I saw a really fantastic advert. Actually, this is a great story. I've told this story for years, but I saw a great advert in the Financial Times, and it said, "Come and join the racy, pacey world of high finance and important deadlines. Become an international officer trainee executive at the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. Call Mr. Vic Coles on 01-234-5678, which was the phone number. Anyway, I rang the number and Mr. Coles answered the phone. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Coles, I'm ringing about the advert in the FT and the international officer trainee job. It's got my name written all over it." And he obviously turned around to his secretary and said, "Margaret, when did the applications for that international officer advert close?" And she said, "Well, actually, they closed today." And he said, "Oh, well, you're very lucky, young man, because the applications closed today. Give me one good reason why I should hire you." And I had had a pretty successful rugby career. And I said, "Well, I'll help the bank win the Hong Kong Sevens. Oh, come and see me at 3 o'clock this afternoon." So I went and see him. We only talked about rugby. I spoke very good French and German, so international languages. I traveled around the world a bit with my parents and his job. Anyway, I got onto this program, and it turned out 4 years later when I resigned that actually I had been the only person ever hired into the program who wasn't a graduate. They'd overlooked that in my application. I then joined an American bank in London and ended up working East and West Coast America with them and all around Europe and the Middle East and the Far East. After 6 years of doing that, my boss called me into his office one day and said, "Well, young man, it's appraisal time, bonus time, and record year, record performance, record everything. It's about time you moved on." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "No, you're on the wrong side of the table. Stop consulting and advising entrepreneurs and go and be one."
Wow.
And
Wow.
he was one of the most amazing bosses I've ever had in my life, fantastic mentor.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
knew he was right because all of my colleagues in the venture capital team, to them, it was all about making money. And to me, it was all about getting involved in the businesses and helping them improve their performance or their productivity or their
Right.
profitability. And
Yeah.
so I was accused of going native, that I wanted to get involved and get my hands in the business versus just sit back and every 3 years flog a business and make a load of money.
Yeah.
I remember going home that evening feeling absolutely liberated that I had been recognized for my entrepreneurial flair, but I was terrified of telling my wife I was going to give up this job. Anyway, I think because of my record bonus, I'd got a year or even more of after-tax money in the bank, so I could afford to take a risk. And my first venture was a complete disaster. I'd been headhunted by a couple of rivals after I'd left. This one chap called me and he said, "Well, young man, now we're going to find out whether you're a real entrepreneur or not." And I said, "Oh, how's that?" He said, "Well, you're either going to come to me with your tail between your legs asking for a job, or you're going to pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and have another crack at something else."
Mm.
And I thought, well, the idea of turning up in his office with my tail between my legs is not that appealing. So I think I better have a go at something else. I read a report in the Sunday Times about the demand for golf. And because of my 10 years in venture capital, I'd been trained to think about strategy and product market fit and all those good things. My big first entrepreneurial venture was buying a golf course that had a driving range and teaching facilities and a par 3 course and everything else as well. And it was that kind of facility that was in big demand, but they were trying to launch it as a private club. I bought it and turned it into a business called Family Golf, where everyone in the whole family could go and learn to play golf, and practice and train and all the rest of it. That business got bought 3 years later by a trade buyer. And even though I made about $100,000 out of it, it was a miracle I made anything, because halfway through those 3 years, the price of leisure assets halved. And so I had to work really hard just to get my investors and my bankers their money back. And I would say actually that was probably one of my successful exits, even though I didn't make a load of money out of it. But I got a very good reputation for doing that. And then some people approached me with a fund. So we went around buying up and hoovering up loss-making golf and country clubs. And eventually floated that company on the stock exchange.
Incredible.
I had the thrill and joy and delight of being the best performing share on the AIM stock market, but I also had the shame and ignominy of being the worst performing share. And it all happened over a sort of 3-month period.
Oh,
We were
wow.
we were the 16th company to launch on this new fledgling market. It was the Wild West days. And of course, we were the worst performing share in December, which everybody wrote up in their year end. But the next 3 or 4 months, we ended up being the best performing share, and no one wrote that up. In that role, I had a massive tectonic plate shift in my life, and I ended up being a single parent to a 7-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son.
Oh my.
Wow.
I couldn't figure out a way to juggle doing both of those jobs, parenting and my CEO job, properly. And I decided that the children came first. And so I resigned. Actually, the bastards made me work for a whole year pretty much.
Oh my gosh, with a 7 and 3-year-old. That's literally my life right now. Yeah, 6 and 3. But I got a hubby he knows how to cook.
Well, my 7-year-old and 3-year-old are now 36 and 32. And I'm expecting my first grandchild in August.
Congrats.
Oh,
Congrats.
congratulations.
The three of us are as tight as a triangle, and
I bet.
it's brilliant. So anyway, so here I am out of work from my nice paid public company CEO job, being a single dad, and hadn't got a clue what I was going to do. And all these people kept turning up to me saying, "Oh, David, I'm thinking of floating my company or expanding overseas or raising money or changing my strategy. Could you help me?" And because of the experience I'd had in the previous 20 years of advising and consulting to companies on those matters, and then practically going out and doing it myself, I was like, sure, I can help you do that. So I ended up with half a dozen clients who I never called myself a mentor. I was just like a consultant or whatever.
Yeah.
And then after about a year, the kids and I went for Sunday lunch at my mum and dad's house. And my mum said, "Oh, it's going so well for you, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, it is going well, Mum, but I've got no time to think about what I'm doing next." And she said, "Oh, I thought this was what you were doing next." So that night, driving home in the car, I remember thinking, I'm actually really good at this. I love doing it. It pays the bills and it makes a difference.
Mhm.
And unless I can think of a criteria overnight why this isn't the right thing to be doing next, this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to be a mentor to CEOs. And over the next 14, 15 years, I built up what eventually became the world's leading chief executive mentoring company. We had clients and offices all around the world. I loved every minute of those 15 years, or 14 of them I loved. But I guess at the end of the day, I wanted to democratize what we were doing with a small number of expensive fee-paying clients and make it available to the world. And my colleagues wanted to keep it, high level CEO only.
Mm.
So I exited that business and was picked up by Britain's probably most famous successful PR guru called Matthew Freud, who decided I should turn myself into a brand, The Mentor. And so I wrote my book, Breakthrough, which is a story in itself, and ended up doing 3 years on the BBC, doing the newspaper review, and I did lots of TV, radio, book tours, speaking tours, and I was the mentor. I had fun for the first 2 or 3 years, but actually, bizarrely, I really hated being famous. I'm quite an introvert. And it was during those 3 years that I thought, I've got to figure out how I democratize this. And this is paying me very nicely to figure that out. I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, I felt I cracked the code and I figured out what I needed to do. And then I started a business, and 3 and a bit years ago, on the 1st of February, I raised couple of £1 million, which was our final fundraising round. We had some big contracts lined up. We were ready to launch in 10 weeks' time. And the completion for our fundraising was on March the 13th at 2 p.m. And I turned up at the lawyer's offices to be told the money's been transferred and the completions all happened. We had a phone call from the investors to say, look, this COVID thing's turned up. We're not sure if it's going to blow over in the next week or so, but we'd just like to delay it for a week or so to let it all blow over. And of course, we all know what happened then. So very sadly, that company with 50 shareholders and 30 employees had to go into administration. My shareholders lost everything. Most of the team didn't get fully paid all their wages. It was the most horrendous horrible, embarrassing thing I've ever had to go through in my life. I was so supported by my fractional part-time CFO, who together we did everything perfectly and honorably for the administration.
Mhm.
I think I was probably 61. I thought, oh my God, I've lost everything. I'm back to zero. And one of my investors from the old company, who was also a non-exec and one of the world's leading investors, Peter Pereira Gray, he took me for a walk and a talk with my dog around Hyde Park. And he said, this is too good an idea. Pick yourself up, dust yourself down, get on the horse and figure out another way to relaunch this. He and 11 of my old shareholders, who'd all lost all their money,
Yeah.
put money up to help us get Entelechy up and running.
Wow.
6 of my team came back to join me.
Wow.
Here we are today, 3 years later, a team of 20 people in the UK, a dozen in India in our development center. This is the best business I've ever set up. It's the best team I've ever created, the best vision. We're going to absolutely set the world on fire over the next few years. So that
Wow.
is my little entrepreneurial journey story for you.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That was great.
Incredible. Incredible. Wow. A roller coaster of a story as well. Straight away from not getting the caddy job to
Yep.
now.
Okay.
You know, it strikes me that you use the word embarrassing. I mean, COVID happened, right? Like the pandemic happened. And embarrassment usually is about, something that maybe you could have seen before it happened, but you couldn't have, but you use the word embarrassment. Why do you feel that word came out?
I think the investors were all grown up adults. They knew I'm putting 50 grand, 100 grand. This is a high risk startup. If it works, I'm going to make 20 times my money. They put money in that they could lose. I think the embarrassment was that I had 30 young people who didn't get paid at the end of the month. And I didn't have the personal finances because I lost everything to even
Right.
give a paycheck. There were
Yeah.
some people who lost money who could afford to lose money. There were some
Sure.
young people who couldn't afford to not get paid that month and needed to get bailed out by the bank of mum or dad. And if I'd had the money, I would have helped them myself,
Yeah.
but I lost everything myself. I think genuinely that whole 2 or 3 months was the most horrible 2 or 3 months I've ever had to go through in my life. And it was very humbling. But at the same time, bizarrely, what's that saying? There's a silver lining in every cloud.
Yeah.
Turned out to also be the most validating.
Yeah.
Because when 11 of your shareholders say, look, we're not cross with you, we don't blame you. And then when 6 of the team say, no, we're not cross with you.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so let's go again. It was a real bittersweet period
Yeah.
of time. And to be honest with you, the average age of our team is 46. They're all self-managing, self-motivated. To use the US equivalent, there are 20 of us in the UK, and we actually live in 19 different states.
Wow.
Wow.
Completely virtual, completely remote. And obviously we've got our team in India as well. But the company culture that we have put together, having to raise this business, with a shoestring in lockdown over the last 3 years, it's the most amazing team, the most amazing culture. I'm so proud of all of my team. They're amazing. One of our lead investor was here at lunch today, and we were talking about succession planning. He's like, well, what would happen if you got run over by a bus? Because we're doing a very exciting deal at the moment. We've literally got the last 10% of our fundraising to close. So if any of your listeners investors out, and we want to close this by the end of July, but we're bringing in a new investor who's bringing in £2.5 million and buying some existing shares at double the current share price. And then we're going to list the shares on a platform in October. And so people coming in can literally double the value of their shares in the next 6 months. So it's super exciting. And we are really making a difference to the individuals that we work with inside organizations and the performance of those organizations. Going back to the 4 things I said earlier on, it's like, I'm really loving this. I'm actually quite good at it. It pays the bills and it's making a difference. And that 4th leg of the stool, the making a difference, as you get older in life, that ends up being more and more important to someone like me.
I've heard you reference Entelechy. Tell us what it is. What does it actually do? What is
What
it?
the hell is it?
What
Yeah,
is the
6
word?
Let's start off, if you don't mind, talking about this beautiful word, Entelechy.
Okay.
Yes.
For many, many years, I remember saying to loads of my friends and colleagues, if only I could find one word that summed up becoming the best version of yourself, because that was too
Yes.
much of a cliche. One of my colleagues and friends, Jenny in Australia, rang me up one day and said, "Oh, I found it. It's the word Entelechy." I said, "Well, what the hell does that mean?" And she said, "It was coined by Aristotle 2,500 years ago. And the entelechy of an acorn is an oak tree. The entelechy of a caterpillar is a butterfly. And, the entelechy of Matt is the ultimate version of Matt with all of his potential fully actualized."
Mhm.
And I thought, that is such a cool word. It's one of those words that people say, "Oh, how do you say it? How do you pronounce it?" And then you tell them, and then they never forget it. And the number of people who said to me, within a month of learning that word, I've used it twice. Anyway, he also coined another phrase, which is that character determines our destiny. And what he meant by that is you end up in life wherever you end up as a direct function of your character. You dial up your character and you achieve more and you're more successful in whatever way you define success. I just love the whole concept. And so we'd already done a lot of research on the talent and skills crisis that every one of your listeners will have in their business. No business can get hold of the talent that we want to need to run our businesses, and we find it hard to retain them and look after. This is all around the world, not just in the US or Europe. For the last 10 years, employers have spent a fortune on soft skills training, and it's never worked. It doesn't deliver an ROI, and it's very poor quality. If you show someone a video of content that's in your LMS, that doesn't mean they've learned anything. It means they've understood something. I'll give you an example. Companies spend loads of money and send people off on time management courses. And at the end of the week or the day or the 2 days or whatever it is, there's a quiz. And guess what? They all score 95% in the quiz. And then the employer wonders why 3, 6, 9 months later, their time management skills haven't improved at all. What's been missing from that training is an underpinning domain that sits underneath the soft skills, which is our 54 character qualities. So in the time management example, unless you learn to be and are accountable, responsible, disciplined, organized, efficient, and reliable, how can you ever be good at time management? So we teach those 54 underpinning character qualities. So whether you want to be a great presenter or a leader of a team, you need a bunch of underpinning character qualities. And so what we do, we help companies become companies of character. So lots of your listeners will resonate this because they keep looking around thinking, how do we improve our performance? How do we improve our productivity and our profitability? And the only way to do that is through your people. And what we do is help your people develop these 54 character qualities. It's a 2-part intervention. The first is 2 months. We call it Discover. Every single employee has a 180 of these 54 character qualities. How do I see myself? Which ones are strengths and which ones are areas I ought to work on? And then we ask everyone to have at least 10 people do a 360, where the 360 respondents say, here's what I see your strengths and your growth opportunities. And then we create a report where every individual sees how they see themselves versus how other people see them. Then we ask them to comment on the character qualities they think are strengths and growth opportunities in the whole company. And then it creates a report where there's a delta between them and the rest of the company. And then we ask them, what would you like it to look like in a year's time? And then it creates a report with a delta between where they are today and where they want to get to. That data has 15.7 million data points in it.
Wow.
Every single employee gets a report just about them. And people have said to me, a 50-page report, who's going to read that? I said, well, there's big pictures and diagrams. But if every page is about you, I don't know anyone who's not going to keep turning the pages.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
But then the company gets all of the composite data about the entire company. Part of the consulting is we help them figure out, well, here's where you are, here's where you want to get to improve your top line, improve your margins, reduce your first year recruitment churn, whatever the challenges are. Then we demonstrate that that's at least a 10 or 20 times return on investment if you deploy us. And if they decide to go ahead beyond Discover, that second phase is Transform, which is a year. which has got 3 parts. Is ongoing data analytics all the time, some expert consultants, 50 days of consultancy over the course of the year to help them implement it and execute it. Every single employee gets an AI coach through our app where all of their 180, 360 and all the other information is preloaded into the app. So every individual employee has got a personalized individual learning journey to take them from where they are to where they and the company want them to get to. And then over the course of the year, we support the organization with engagement to help the individual learners with a view that at the end of the year, they've achieved that growth in performance, productivity, profitability, or whatever the other metrics are they want to achieve. And all done through developing the individual character qualities of their employees.
Wow. Matt,
Wow.
pull out your report.
Yep. Like I'm blown away. So just, David, I've had a lot of experience, strength finders, disc, extended disc, things like that. But what's fascinating, what you're talking to me about today is that you found these 54 unique qualities that are, I guess, the underlinings of how we're wired, why we do certain things and why we don't. And if we can basically get to the root, I'm paraphrasing here, forgive me, but
Grossly
the root,
paraphrasing.
yes, grossly
Just
paraphrasing.
kidding.
Yes, exactly. But like the foundational, the root pattern, if you will, of a series of those 54 and address those, then after addressing those, we'll see a better result as opposed to just trying to lump them all into one bucket or something. Is that how I'm understanding it a little bit?
Yes. I mean, these character qualities, there's 54 of them.
Yeah.
And you could give me any soft skill or any company aspiration. We want to be managers of change or thought leaders. And I will show you how to match the character qualities to the soft skills that deliver. And that's our framework, which is called Be, Do, Become. Essentially, everything that's gone before shows you the doing skills, the becoming skills, but not the underpinning character qualities. The thing that we dislike about DISC and Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinder is like a horoscope. You are an ENTJ.
Right.
Sorry, it's a tattoo on your arm for the rest of your life. Nothing you can do about it. Whereas actually, every baby born on the planet has the innate ability to be brilliant at all of these 54 character qualities. But maybe it got parented out of them or schooled out of them or churched out of them or workplaced out of them or communities out of them or social media out of them. I can sum Entelechy Academy up in probably 2 30-second stories. If you show those 54 character qualities to a head of HR or a CEO of an entrepreneurial business and say, if we could dial up any of these 54 character qualities in your organizations with a view to enhancing your 3 Ps, the performance, profitability, and product, which ones would you choose? And they go through and think, oh, we'd like our people to be organized, disciplined, reliable.
Yeah.
And they end up going, well, we want all of them.
Yeah. I was going to say all of them. That's what I was laughing. We want them all.
And it's like, well, if they all were all of them, what difference would that make? Oh my gosh, we could do this and do that. And it's like it solves all the problems. And then we say to them, what is it you're doing today to develop these skills in your people? We're not doing anything. We're sending them off on time management courses, which don't work. And they all ask the same questions. Why has no one ever thought of this before? And there is a long, complicated answer to that. But basically, in the last 50, 60 years, any state education system has had eviscerated out of it drama, sport, music, debating, and all of those human skills, that interpersonal skills. And now all the focus is on STEM subject. When we show it to the young people, their number one question is, why weren't we taught this at college? Why weren't we taught this at university? These are exactly the life skills that my mum, my granny, my auntie always said I was going to need in life, but I've never been taught them. And we say to them, well, pick 2 or 3 and tell us, if you nailed that one, what would the benefit be to you? Oh, if I was that one, I'd persuade Diane to go on a date with me. And if I was good at that one, I'd get that promotion I'm looking for. And I was good at that one, my mum and dad would be over the moon proud of me or whatever. And so they're like, okay, where do I start? Okay, well, why don't you just work on those 3? And then, of course, 3 or 4 or 5 months later, they've nailed it. And everyone's turning around saying, oh my gosh, you've transformed. And then we say, now let's go for assessment. Now you've learned it and you've applied it and it's working. Now let's go for an assessment. And it's an independent assessment. And if at the end of the assessment, which only takes them 10 minutes to complete, we award them a badge, they can put that badge on their LinkedIn profile, they can put it on their CV, basically saying to employee, if you hire me, I turn up organized, reliable, disciplined, responsible, analytical, curious, collaborative. And look, I've got a badge in them. And employers are going, where have you been all my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
David, can I ask you, what would you say to somebody who says, we have the capability to tap into all 54 of these custom traits, but the amount of energy based upon how we're wired might require more exertion of time, energy, commitment to adjust one of these behavioral patterns or traits, as you say?
Very astute and observant of you. So I remember I had my first Myers-Briggs profile done 40 years ago,
Uh-huh.
and I came out an INFP.
Okay.
I had one done 10 years later, INFP. I had one done another 10 years later, INFP.
Yeah.
I am off the charts INFP.
Okay.
I always fill out the forms honestly, and it produces the same result.
Right.
However, not that MBTI have ever done this, but if they asked 10 of my friends to do my report, I wouldn't end up being an INFP because my friends don't see me as introvert. They see me as gregarious or outgoing, but I spend a lot of time on my own. I live in the rural countryside. I like my own company, and I process everything in a Myers-Briggs I sent internally. But the point is, they're measuring very different things. Now, I could be an INFP, and I probably will be to the day I kick the bucket. But that doesn't mean that I can't be more kind, or I can't be more empathetic, or I can't be more collaborative, or I can't be more pioneering, or I can't be more any of the character qualities. And the beautiful thing is, let's say all three of us did a 360. And let's say, for argument's sake, that our 360 respondents said to all three of us, you need to be more open-minded and more curious. Now, I'm just guessing, but if we all said, right, well, let's meet up in a week's time and talk on what we've all done and what's worked for us to be more open-minded and more curious, I guarantee you we'd all tell very different stories, because what had worked for you wouldn't work for Matt, wouldn't work for me. The point is, we can all grow and develop and improve any one of those 54 character qualities in our unique way, but still be an INFP.
I equate this to the joke always Nicole makes is, so Nicole knew pre-law school Matt, and she always laughs because she says, you went to law school? Because she knows who I am personality wise. And so on a disc profile, someone would easily probably look at someone who's like a high S or C and say, oh, that person probably is going to do good in law school. They're analytical, they're disciplined, they're even introverted. They're going to go spend all that time in the library. And I tried.
That was not my buddy, Matt.
No, I did very well in the LSATs and I wanted to go to law school. David, I will tell you, I did everything the book said as far as like, okay, spend the number of hours you need to spend in the library, do the number of practice exams, do everything. And what I realized was every time I tried to change my behavior to become more disciplined, to spend more of those hours in the library, what ended up happening was from the first set of exams to the second set of exams, I actually did worse. I don't know how this plays into Entelechy, but like what I learned from me was I had to sit back and say, okay, there's a spot where I'm comfortable. And that spot is either in a bar or a coffee shop where there's things going on. I had to get out of the library and I could spend 8-9 hours straight sitting at a coffee shop, drinking coffee, watching what's going on around me, but also reading my book and studying, do my practice exams. And that worked for me. Before I knew it, the next semester, grades shot up, because I was disciplining myself, but I was doing it in a different way than what they told me to do it.
You found the groove that worked for you.
Right.
I'm not saying that a disc report doesn't give you an insight, and it could be that 79% of lawyers are all having this and this profile.
Yeah.
So fine, it tells you that you could be predisposed to being a lawyer.
Right.
However, when you get to turn up and work in a big law firm that's got 27 different types of litigation,
Yeah.
being a corporate finance VC lawyer versus a divorce lawyer. My favorite example of this is a few months ago, someone showed me the disc profile to become a nurse. And I was like, how does that work? Because if you're an accident and emergency unit nurse, You need a whole different set of character qualities than if you're in palliative care, end of life nursing, or pediatrics, or a maternity nurse, or whatever. And so you can't lump all nurses into one bucket. And so the character qualities that you then look at to be a emergency nurse or a maternity nurse or a end of care nurse, that's where the richness of character comes out. So by doing our profile, the lady who's working as a maternity nurse might think, actually, I'd be better off in A&E.
Yeah.
Over the years, through my Merrick mentoring days, I mean, I'm not going to do it now, but I could probably tell you both from this conversation what your Myers-Briggs profile is. But so what?
Right.
I just realized that I just got giddy over that, like how other people enjoy horoscopes. I'm like, ooh, guess mine.
Guess mine. Guess it's funny. I want to say something very important because David, I think something you hit the nail on the head there is that according to some sort of profiling, hey, you're 79% likely to be successful, maybe not say as a lawyer, but to get through law school. And that's kind of where I was going with the whole thing. Like they tell you there's a box to fit in to get through law school and how to do it so you can pass to get that exam. I mean, some of the people that were at the top of my class barely make any money. They're not the greatest lawyers, right?
Okay, so let me give you a personal story. I don't remember exactly how old I was, probably about 12. I've got 2 younger sisters. And I don't remember what caused the conversation, but my mother said to me one day, really, David, you need to learn to be a lot more gentlemanly. I was like, oh, okay, how do I do that? And she said, well, ask your father because he's very gentlemanly. So I did ask my dad, and he gave me some, what's the phrase in America? Fake it till you make it.
Wow,
variation.
That's funny.
If you see a lady at the train station who's got a pushchair, then offer to pick the pushchair up and lift it up the stairs for her. If you see a pensioner who's trying to cross the road, take her arm and walk her across. If you see a lady who wants to go into a shop, open the door, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, okay, I can do that. So over the next 2 or 3, 4 months or whatever, I'd help old ladies over the road. I'd open doors for people, run up to people with pushchairs and do whatever. And after a period of time, it just becomes innate in you and you're not consciously thinking about it. You just do it.
Yeah.
And of course, the joy was when the people you helped said, oh, what a lovely young gentleman you are. And it's like, oh, maybe I'm a gentleman now.
Yes.
Maybe.
Fast forward the video to 2023 and, young people the same age as I was when that happened to me, they're glued to their phones and their TikTok accounts, and their entire experience of life is virtual. They probably wouldn't be as naturally comfortable to go up and ask someone to help them cross the road or whatever. They think someone else should be doing it for them. And so I think we learned things all those generations ago that just aren't there easily for people. I had a shock a few weeks ago, a brilliant conversation, but a shock. And 3 young men who had worked for several years in New York for Google had decided to all quit on the same day and come back and go to Berlin. And these are all young chaps, mid to late 20s. And they're like, oh my gosh, David, we love these character qualities. Who's going to teach them to us? And I said, you are. And they're like, what do you mean? No, who's going to do the teaching? No, you're going to do the learning and you're going to effectively coach yourself using our app and our AI coach to support you. And they're like, oh my gosh, our generation, unless we go to a classroom and are taught, we don't know how to learn.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Everything I've ever learned, I went on a course, I went on a lecture, I had a module or whatever. And so I said, if you decided from your 360 that you had to be more kind or whatever it was, how would you go about it? Well, I'd go and do some research and figure out how to do it. Okay, once you've done the research and you figured out, I like that idea, that'll work for me, I'll try that out. What are you going to do then? I don't know. What do I do then? I said, well, you go and try it out and you see if it works and you course correct. And he was like, oh my gosh, how exciting. So we've built a learning journey. We take people from novice to mastery and then eventually to wisdom sharer. But we assume you don't know how to do this. We'll hold your hand whilst you're a novice, and every loop around the learning journey will let go a bit more and then take the safety rails up and all the rest of it. Because what we're actually helping young people to do is learn how to learn for themselves. So they become self-directed.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
There's two gifts of Entelechy for the learner. One is the introduction to character, because it will make the most dramatic impact on their life of anything.
Mhm.
And the second is they learn how to learn anything.
Yeah.
So if employers, if all of your entrepreneurial business owner listeners, they will tell you that they're just not self-managing, self-motivated, self-starting. And we have created, honestly, the most amazing tool to help them become that.
Yeah. Incredible. What are some of the characters that you look for when you are putting together your team?
I'm going to give a really smart-ass answer to that. It all depends on what team they're in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
You
a
know,
great
if you're
answer.
in sales, you need one set. If you're in marketing, you need another
Yeah.
set. So when we're writing a role description, we think about the character qualities that would optimize someone's ability in that role. And then we recruit against the character qualities as well as their experience and qualifications and all that malarkey.
Does
Mhm.
Entelechy help you as the company owner determine how to do that? Or is that through the AI, or is it through the consulting? Like, if I know I lack in certain characteristics or qualities and I'm looking to hire for somebody in my organization, say in an administrative or a management role of some sorts, is my 360 profile going to help me figure out what I should be hiring for outside of what I should be working on for myself? I
No,
know
well,
she's laughing.
it is after all our business, so we ought to
Right.
be reasonably good at it. But, if we're hiring a new salesperson or we're hiring a new developer or whatever,
Right.
we know what the character qualities are that a successful salesperson typically
Mhm.
would
Sure.
have. We'll actually get them to do their 360 before they come for an interview, or at least their 180. And then depending on if there's a good match or not with their 180, we might say to them, tell us a story about being curious, or tell us a story about being analytical or creative or whatever. And we listen to their stories, because it's always the stories that really tell you more about anybody than their qualifications.
That
And
part.
let's say you've got a team of 10 salespeople and you did a 360 on all of them, and 6 of the top salespeople all have these 5 character qualities. Then you're going to go out and hire people who've got those same character
Right.
qualities. And surprise, surprise, the people that you interview with those character qualities end up telling you stories that demonstrate the exact same stories that your existing sales force would tell you about themselves. And because character qualities are behaviors, people are telling you real life stories.
Right.
Well, this happened to me and this worked out and this didn't. And I learned this and I course corrected and now I know. And so you learn so much about someone in a half an hour interview that you wouldn't say, oh, Johnny, let's walk through your CV and tell me your life story. Like, oh,
I'd want to hire for initiative. I don't know if that's on the list, but that's usually what I see. Like, I don't know. I'm the oldest of 5. My siblings, there's a big age gap. And I'm like, can you guys get a little initiative around here? And so, yeah, I love hearing when someone has some initiative. I don't know where that fits though.
So a character quality is something you are, or you can be, or become better. So I am confident. I am
Mhm.
courageous. I could be more kind. I could be more
Mhm.
analytical. What was the word you just
Taking
used?
initiative.
Taking initiative is a soft skill because it's a doing skill.
Mhm.
Taking initiative requires you to be courageous, confident.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The character
Yeah,
qualities that
I
meant you would be
see.
good at taking initiative.
I
Mhm.
see. Incredible.
So we have a lot of, small companies, entrepreneurs, and then some decision makers on the call. So like, where would they want to start? Like if they wanted to start to explore their own selves or their own company, what would they want to do to start delving into this world of what Entelechy has to offer them?
Go to the Entelechy Academy LinkedIn profile, because that's where we publish all of our papers and everything. Go to the website. There's loads of information there, entelechy.academy. And why not download the app? There's a 14-day free trial, and knock yourselves out and do a 180 and get a 360 done and see what people think. And if you like it, pay for a subscription.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Incredible. I'm excited to see it take the world by
Yes,
fire, like you
seriously.
said.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's
I tell
needed.
you what, in 2023, I'm 64 years old. I think I've said that twice in this interview. I can't remember a time in my life where I think the world has been in more turmoil than it is today. And the only way we can solve the problems facing the planet is by everybody to up their game a bit and raise their consciousness. And the only way to do that is through raising their character. So the world needs the world to raise its character competence to determine its destiny. So I don't think we could have launched this business at a better time. And it is absolutely the most amazing experience for anybody to think, oh, I didn't think I was very good at this, but look, a month later, I'm now getting loads of confidence and I've applied it in my everyday life. It will transform your love life, your parenting skills, your community status, as well as your performance at work.
Yeah.
And at the
Wow.
end of the day, one of the most shocking statistics, I think, at the moment is the percentage of people who apply for a job and get the job but leave in the first year. It's like 50% of people leave. Well, that is the most expensive thing for an employer. So if you can dial up your sophistication to hire the right people and look after them and develop them so they don't leave, that can save you a fortune.
David, so I have to know, you said about you that you wanted something that would change the world, and you're onto that, that's for sure. But you could have done anything. There could have been lots of other things that you chose to do. Where did this start for you?
I think it started off in school. I didn't realize until 30 odd years later, when my son was diagnosed as being very dyslexic, that I too am very dyslexic. I was just called stupid at school. But actually, I knew I wasn't stupid. And actually, I knew I was, pretty intelligent. I kept thinking, I know I'm not how I am being described by other people. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it was, but I would then perhaps go and be supportive of other people who were being accused of the same thing. And I'd want to help and nurture and support them. I noticed that my support, my mentoring, if you like, really got results. And they were always like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have achieved that without your help. And so the greatest joy that I've ever received in my life was actually being a parent. Other than that, the greatest joy was helping other people achieve their potential.
Mhm.
And so from quite an early age, the joy I've found in my life is helping my team, my colleagues, my customers or whatever, for them to become their Entelechy. And so how do I become mine? By helping other people become theirs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. You mentioned papers that you're getting out there. And just one other question. How are you getting out regular info besides just appearing on other podcasts? But what about you? Are you sharing one a week? Maybe a David story a week that we could all soak up a little bit?
We're exploring at the moment doing our own podcast,
Yeah.
Oh,
the
great.
Entelechy podcast. I've actually had an idea which none of my team like, but I love it.
What's that?
We're going to love it.
Yep.
Just letting you know. We're going to love it.
So I don't want to interview famous, successful people. I want to interview the maternity nurse in Oxford Hospital
Yeah.
who's just delivered her 1,000th baby or something. And
Yeah.
I want to talk to her to choose one or two character qualities that she knows. I want
Wow.
to talk to the paramedic in Cheltenham Accident and Emergency. I want to talk to the foreman of the local company who's building 200 new affordable homes.
The firefighter that runs into his 200th fire to
Yeah.
save somebody.
I want it to be very relatable. Like, just tell me one story about one character quality that is helping you in your career. I want it to be ordinary, everyday people, young
Yeah.
people on TikTok for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I like it. So our team, the SmartCookie Media team, produces this show, and we started producing another show, but they haven't launched it yet. It's with a financial investment firm. There's so much compliance and legalese that they can't give any advice on a podcast. But I said, can you tell stories about money? And I think that's what you'd be doing, which would make it relatable to all those nurses. They'd all have their different stories, more so than just talking to, like you said, the executives. So I think you're onto something. And you have a TV radio background. You know it sticks. It's why you could tell such a great story right away. We're going to link everything that you shared with us
Yes.
in the show notes so everyone can find it, learn more about you, grab that subscription, learn from themselves and their experiences to become their Entelechy.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation with both of you.
Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in.
Wow. Like
Yeah.
powerhouse. Wow.
Okay, what do you
Sorry.
got?
So the first one for me totally has to be this concept of character of all people needed in the world today because of the fact that It's stuff that people don't learn. They're not taught in schools. They're not developed anymore. Yes, you and I could sit and talk a million different times about having courage or ambition, like how he related that to the word of taking initiative. And we can think of a million different reasons of why to apply it in business. But I think this overbroad concept of how the world needs it is an amazing thing that I could see how he's changing the world.
Yeah. So like we're all learning these character traits, but we might only be learning so many. So he mentioned, it could be outschooled, out churched, right? Like you're not getting it from somewhere. So I don't know what the character is for, maybe it's courageous, but my mom was very, very shy. I was very, very shy. My mom was determined that I wouldn't be shy. So I'm going to guess in that app, part of being courageous, how we learned from Fred Joyle,
Yes,
Super Bowl,
yeah.
is like taking an action, right? Like doing something about it. And so my mom made sure that I was up on stage whenever I could be. And then before you know it, I would just be on stage, even when my mom wasn't around. So speech meets and spelling bees and passion play, like it just became this muscle that you just kept flexing. And so I think that's courageous, but it's only because I had somebody to say, hey, I don't want you to be like this, like me, or his mom told him, like, you need to be more gentlemanly. I mean, kindness right now. Could people please, I'm always expecting something crazy in the comments of social media. You'll read 5 that are negative, and then you'll find some people that stick up for people and are kind. I don't think that it's not anywhere or that it's void from the planet. I just think that there's no real intention in making sure people are getting it. Not everyone's going to Sunday school. That's fine. Not everyone's going to a school that they love. Okay, well, where are they going to get these things from? So I think it's fantastic that he's got a spot.
Yes. Awesome. What else? What do you
Mhm.
got?
Everyone's in a talent crisis, right? I don't think that's like news necessarily, not a giant takeaway, but just to think about how if everyone's in a talent crisis, everyone's in a talent crisis. The
Yep.
only option is to train and then not just train because they could leave, but train and figure out ways to keep. I think the way that you keep people is to make sure they are working on something bigger, right? Like what's the mission at hand? Do they feel they see their role in that they're having wins? And so to me, it just comes back, if everyone's in talent crisis, the only option is to make sure whoever we do have that we invest in them the best way we can. And this is an excellent way to invest.
And I don't want to go too mushy, but like, you kept referencing that word about kindness. And I'm going to go even further. I think it's all about just caring, having a culture of care. Do I care about something bigger? If I care about something bigger as the employer, as the owner of the company, and that resonates with you, now you're caring about something bigger. Oh, and by the way, if I'm also caring about that and you're caring about that, I'm probably caring about you. I'm caring about your well being. I go back to your Disney villain comment always.
So what's super interesting about you bringing the Disney villains up, it's that they were like an organization in this world out to do good. I'm not naming names or anything like that. I felt like at that time, it was like a bait and switch. They were out to do good, but we were treated terribly. So they cared about something really big and everybody inside cared about that too. And they were about that mission and running after it. But in the meantime, it was awful and toxic and people hated being there. And so you can even have places that are up to good, up to a mission, but inside they're not great. They're not kind. I thought one of the takeaways for me at the end, he talked about how that he would like to do a show at some point, but he'd want to do it with just anybody, like just everyday people doing their work, doing their life, and how character shows up. And he said that his team doesn't love it. And I knew before he was going to say it, we were going to love it. He asked for feedback, like, how did he do on the show? And, it was easy to tell him, like, well, you told stories, and that's what we're here for. We're here to share stories only you can tell. It's no surprise to me that the guy behind building other characters wants to talk about everyday characters and that he happens to be around a team who's like, yeah, but that's not our ideal target. Right? Like it's no
Right.
surprise.
Right.
But my guess is David will probably find a way to get those stories out because that is why he's doing it. He's, yes, doing it for the business community that he's supported for so long and mentored along the way, but he's also doing it for everyday folks just like me and you.
I found it offensive, just, as the lawyer in the room, when he said, I'm going to give you a smart ass comment. It depends. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you say it depends?
It was a turning comment for sure.
Exactly.
It wasn't a smart ass comment at all.
You said you had something else. What else you got?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, this might actually be the third one. Okay.
Okay.
Best takeaway. I heard this line from a mentor of mine while I was in graduate school.
Okay.
And she told me, and I couldn't believe her. At the time, I was, 22 and a half. I was taking care of my kid sister in my first apartment. Like my sister lived with me. And you remember those times. Those wild times.
Yes.
Just trying to keep it all together, right? Full-time job, new work, kiddo to high school. And she told me, Nicole, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. And I was like, oh, how dare you? Like, you shouldn't fake things. Like, it should be or it shouldn't be. Or she was like, nope, that's what you should do. And to hear him say that that's pretty much what his dad told him, because then after a little while, it just became innate. I was like, okay, all right, officially, Denise is, well, we called her Do. She's validated. Now I have somebody else on the other side of the pond who's also been like, fake it till you make it. So if you're not an on-time person or an organized person, maybe you fake it.
Yeah.
Till you make it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, with a time machine and a DeLorean, I will always be at time.
Oh, you could fake it. You could change all your clocks, Matt. I challenge you. You just fake it for a little while. And then
You
all
just
of a
want
sudden,
you want me here 10 minutes earlier for the next show.
I do.
Call it.
I do. Just be here earlier.
Just be here
I'm
earlier.
going to start to change your calendar. Just
That's what
see
you're
it
going to do.
start- Starts a half an hour
You're going
early.
to start a half an hour. You're like, what do you mean they don't start?
Well, friends, you know what we say. If you're listening,
Keep listening.
you've been listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Show, produced by the team here at SmartCookie Media.